Dr. Sarah Mitchell had been a xenobiologist for 22 years. She had studied alien life forms on 6 different worlds. She had published 43 papers in major scientific journals. She was one of the most respected scientists in her field. She had received the Earth Science Foundation's highest award 3 years ago. She was, by every measurement, a successful and accomplished woman. And on this particular morning, she sat alone in a small medical facility on Earth, and she screamed until her voice was gone. The screaming had been going on for several minutes. The medical staff had eventually given her a sedative. The sedative had calmed her body. It had not calmed her mind. Her mind was still screaming, silently now in the dark place inside her where her daughter should have been. Her daughter Emma was 8 years old. Emma had brown hair and brown eyes and a small scar on her chin from where she had fallen off her bicycle when she was 5. Emma liked science books and her dog Buddy and the small wooden bird that her grandmother had carved for her last year. Emma was bright and curious and stubborn and kind. Emma was the most important person in Sarah's life. Sarah had been a single mother for the past 4 years, ever since Emma's father had died in an industrial accident. The two of them had been everything to each other. And now Emma was gone. 3 days ago, Sarah and Emma had been on a research vessel called the Carolina Voyager. The vessel had been conducting a routine biological survey of an asteroid field in a relatively unexplored region of space. The mission had been considered safe. The region had been classified as low risk. There were no known hostile species operating in the area. Sarah had brought Emma along because Emma had begged to come on one of her mother's research trips, and Sarah had thought it would be safe and educational. The vessel was scheduled to return to Earth in 2 weeks. The vessel had been attacked on the 3rd day of the mission. The attack had come without warning. A small fleet of unfamiliar warships had emerged from faster-than-light travel near the Carolina Voyager. The fleet had opened fire immediately. The Carolina Voyager had been a civilian science vessel. It had minimal defensive capabilities. Within minutes, the ship had been disabled. The attacking ships had then boarded. The boarders had been a species the Earth records called the Veshtari. The Veshtari were a small, aggressive species that operated as raiders and slavers on the outer edges of known space. They were officially condemned by the Galactic Council, but the Council had never been able to fully suppress their activities. The Veshtari had been targeting civilian vessels for centuries. They had been growing bolder in recent years, attacking ships closer to civilized space than they used to. The Veshtari boarders had killed most of the Carolina Voyager's crew. They had killed 7 scientists and 4 security officers. They had spared 3 crew members, Sarah, Emma, and 1 young technician named Marcus Lee, who they had wounded but kept alive for unclear reasons. The 3 survivors had been taken aboard the lead Veshtari ship. They had been processed for transport. The Veshtari intended to sell them in their slave markets. Adult humans were valuable. Human children even more so. The Veshtari estimated that Sarah and Marcus would sell for 30,000 credits each. Emma, being young and healthy and pretty by the standards of many species that purchased child slaves, would sell for perhaps 80,000 credits. Sarah had understood all of this. The Veshtari boarders had explained it to her with apparent relish while they were being transferred to their cells. Sarah had been forced to listen to them describe what would happen to her daughter. She had been forced to imagine her 8-year-old being sold to some unspeakable buyer. She had broken something inside herself listening to those words. She had wanted to die, but she could not die. Emma needed her. After 3 hours aboard the Veshtari ship, something unexpected had happened. The Veshtari commander had received a transmission. The transmission had been from Earth Defense Command. The transmission had been brief and direct. Earth Defense Command had detected the attack on the Carolina Voyager. Earth Defense Command had identified the Veshtari fleet responsible. Earth Defense Command was offering the Veshtari 1 chance to release all 3 captured humans and leave Earth space immediately. If they refused, the Veshtari fleet would be destroyed. The Veshtari commander had laughed. He had transmitted back a contemptuous reply. He had told Earth that the captives were now Veshtari property. He had told Earth that there would be no negotiation. He had told Earth that he had 27 warships in his fleet and that he was not afraid of Earth's response. He had been wrong to be unafraid. What had happened next had been very fast. Sarah had been in her cell with Emma. She had heard alarms throughout the Veshtari ship. She had heard impacts. She had heard explosions. She had heard the Veshtari crew running through the corridors, shouting in their own language. She had not understood the words, but she had understood the tone. They were panicking. Then her cell door had opened. 2 Veshtari guards had entered. They had been agitated. They had pointed their weapons at her. Adult human female, you will come with us now. Where are you taking me? You will see, move. She had looked at Emma. Emma had been holding her hand tightly. Emma had been crying silently. Emma had not wanted to let go. Where is my daughter going? Your daughter remains, only the adult comes. No, we stay together. Adult human female, you will come with us or we will kill the child in front of you and take you anyway. Move. Sarah had moved. She had pulled her hand away from Emma. She had told Emma that she would come back for her. She had told Emma to be brave. She had told Emma that she loved her. She had said all of these things in the few seconds it had taken the Veshtari to grab her arm and pull her out of the cell. Emma had been crying. Emma had been calling for her. Emma had been screaming her mother's name. That had been the last time Sarah had seen her daughter. The Veshtari had escorted Sarah to a small escape pod. They had put her inside. They had launched the pod. The pod had drifted away from the Veshtari ship. Sarah had been in the escape pod for approximately 10 minutes when an Earth military shuttle had retrieved her. The Earth shuttle pilot had explained briefly what had happened. The Veshtari had received a final ultimatum from Earth Defense Command. The ultimatum had specified that releasing one captive would not be enough. All three had to be released. The Veshtari commander had ignored this. He had released Sarah only as a kind of cruel mockery, sending her back as a warning to Earth that he kept the others. The Earth shuttle had taken her to a small medical facility on a nearby support station. She had been medically evaluated. She had been declared physically unharmed. She had been informed that the Veshtari ship was now in active combat with Earth Defense Forces. The outcome of the battle was uncertain. There was no confirmation yet about the status of her daughter or the wounded technician. That had been an hour ago. Sarah had been waiting for news, waiting for information, waiting for someone to tell her that her daughter was safe. The news had not come. The waiting had become unbearable. She had started screaming. The medical staff had sedated her. She sat now in the small recovery room. She was awake but groggy from the sedative. She was alone. She was waiting. The door to the room opened. A woman entered. She was wearing a military uniform. She was tall and thin with short gray hair and tired eyes. She looked like she had not slept in days. She approached Sarah's bed slowly. Dr. Mitchell, I am General Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Forces. I am here to give you an update on the situation. My daughter. Dr. Mitchell, I am sorry. I need to tell you what we know and what we do not know. Please listen carefully. My daughter, please just tell me. Are still attempting to locate her. The Veshtari fleet has been engaged and severely damaged. We have destroyed approximately 18 of their 27 warships. The remaining 9 ships are scattered and attempting to escape. We are pursuing. We believe Emma was transferred from the lead ship to one of the smaller vessels during the battle. The Veshtari commander appears to have anticipated our military response and made arrangements to disperse his most valuable captives across multiple ships. You do not know where she is. We do not currently know which ship she is on. We are searching. We have her tracker signal. We can locate her once we narrow down which of the remaining ships contains her. But we have not yet narrowed it down. The Veshtari ships are using stealth technology and electronic countermeasures. Her tracker. All Earth citizens have a personal location tracker implanted at birth. It is part of our routine safety protocols. Emma's tracker is functioning. We know she is alive. We know she is on one of the Veshtari ships. We just have not yet identified which one. We are working on it. Sarah closed her eyes. She tried to breathe. She tried to absorb what she was being told. Emma was alive. That was the most important thing. Emma was alive. Earth Defense Forces were looking for her. They would find her. They had to find her. General Chen. Yes, Dr. Mitchell. What about the technician, Marcus Lee? He was also captured. Marcus Lee was rescued from the lead Veshtari ship before it was destroyed. He is currently aboard one of our medical vessels. He is in critical condition due to the wounds the Veshtari inflicted on him during his capture. The doctors believe he will survive. He is being transported to Earth for advanced treatment. Good, I am glad. Dr. Mitchell, I want you to know that finding Emma is our highest priority. Every available Earth defense ship in this sector is now searching for the remaining Veshtari vessels. We have engineering teams trying to penetrate the Veshtari electronic countermeasures. We have intelligence analysts trying to predict where the ships might be heading. We are doing everything possible to find her. How long? I do not know, Dr. Mitchell. I cannot promise you a timeline. It could be hours. It could be days. It could be longer. The Veshtari are dispersing. They will try to take her to a secure location where they can hide her. We need to find her before they get there. The longer this takes, the more dangerous her situation becomes. Sarah opened her eyes. She looked at General Chen. What are they going to do to her? General Chen hesitated. Dr. Mitchell, I do not want to. General, please, I need to know. I have been imagining the worst things since the moment they took her. I need to know what is actually likely. I need the truth. General Chen sat down on the chair next to Sarah's bed. She looked at Sarah for a long moment. Then she spoke quietly. Dr. Mitchell, the Veshtari are not a sophisticated species. They are raiders. They are slavers. They are not interested in their captives as anything other than commodities. Emma will not be physically harmed if they can avoid it because physical harm reduces her market value. The Veshtari will keep her healthy. They will feed her. They will not abuse her in ways that leave marks. They want her to be in good condition when they sell her. And the buyers, what about the buyers? That depends on who purchases her. The Veshtari slave markets serve many different species. Some of those species purchase children for relatively benign purposes. Domestic servants, companions, wards. Other species purchase children for less benign purposes. There is no way to predict which type of buyer would acquire Emma if she reaches a slave market. What is the likelihood that she would be purchased for benign purposes? Approximately 40%. The other 60% of purchases involve outcomes that range from unpleasant to catastrophic. Sarah closed her eyes again. She tried not to cry. She tried not to scream again. She tried to think clearly. General Chen, what is the protocol? If the Veshtari reach a slave market with Emma, what happens then? Dr. Mitchell, if Emma is sold at auction, the chain of custody becomes very difficult to track. Buyers from many different species participate in these markets. They take their purchases back to their home worlds. Tracking becomes very difficult. We have on occasion recovered Earth citizens from slave markets, but it has required years of intelligence work and diplomatic pressure. The success rate is approximately 20%. So if she is sold, the probability that we recover her in a reasonable time frame drops significantly. How long do I have? The nearest Veshtari slave market that the remaining ships could reach is approximately 72 hours away at maximum speed. We have approximately 3 days to find her before she reaches that market. 3 days. 3 days, we have all our resources on this. We will find her if we can. But Dr. Mitchell, I cannot promise that we will succeed. I have to be honest with you. There is a real chance that we will not find her in time. Sarah sat in silence. She thought about her daughter. She thought about Emma being held alone on a Veshtari ship. She thought about Emma being frightened, alone, surrounded by enemies. She thought about Emma needing her mother and her mother not being there. She felt something change inside her. The fear and grief did not go away, but they were joined by something else, something cold and hard, something that her training as a scientist had taught her to recognize. It was anger, the kind of anger that was useful, the kind of anger that could be channeled. General Chen, I am a xenobiologist. I have studied alien species for 22 years. I have specific expertise on certain species that includes the Veshtari. I have published papers on their biology and behavior. I know things about them that even your intelligence service may not know. Dr. Mitchell, General, I am offering my services. I am offering to consult with your intelligence team. I am offering to use everything I know to help you find my daughter. I cannot sit here in this room and wait. I will lose my mind if I do that. I need to be useful. I need to do something. Please, let me help. General Chen looked at her for a long moment. Dr. Mitchell, are you certain? You have been through extreme trauma in the past hours. You may not be in the best mental state to work effectively. We have many specialists already engaged. Adding you may not be helpful. General, I am the only Earth citizen with my specific expertise on Veshtari biology and behavioral patterns. I have studied their ship designs. I have published on their command structures. I have specific knowledge that may make a difference. Even if I am traumatized, my knowledge is still valid. Please, let me help. General Chen considered this, then she nodded. All right, Dr. Mitchell, we will accept your offer. I will have you transported to our operations center. You will work with our intelligence team. We will provide whatever support you need. But Dr. Mitchell, please understand. If you reach a breaking point during this work, you must tell us. We cannot have you collapse in the middle of the operation. Your daughter needs you to be functional. Your mind is a resource. Take care of it. I will, thank you, General. Thank you for accepting my help. Thank you for offering it. Now, let us begin. The next 48 hours were the most intense of Sarah Mitchell's life. She worked alongside Earth's best intelligence analysts. She provided them with information about Veshtari behavioral patterns that even their own files did not contain. She helped them predict where the Veshtari ships were likely to flee. She helped them identify subtle signatures in the Veshtari electronic countermeasures that human analysts had not been trained to recognize. By the end of the first day, Earth Defense Forces had located 5 of the remaining 9 Veshtari ships. They had engaged and captured 3 of them. Emma had not been on any of them. By the end of the second day, 2 more ships had been located and engaged. Emma had not been on those either. There were 2 ships left, 2 ships unaccounted for, 2 ships that could be carrying Emma. The tracker signal had been intermittent. The Veshtari countermeasures had been disrupting it. The signal had given Earth's analysts only fragmentary information. They knew Emma was alive. They knew she was being transported. They could not yet pinpoint her exact location. On the third day, with only hours remaining before the Veshtari could reach the slave market, Sarah had an insight. She had been studying the movement patterns of the 2 remaining ships. She had been comparing them to historical Veshtari behavior. She had noticed something that the human analysts had missed. The Veshtari commander, when he had separated his most valuable captives across multiple ships, had not done so randomly. He had used a specific protocol. The most valuable captive went on a specific type of ship in a specific position in the fleet formation. Sarah explained this to the analysts. She walked them through the Veshtari command logic. She showed them the pattern. The most valuable captive, the one the commander would most want to protect, would be on the smallest and fastest of the remaining ships. The ship that was best designed to escape. The ship that was currently traveling at a slightly different vector than its companion. That one, she said, pointing to one of the 2 remaining ships on the tactical display. That is where Emma is. The analysts double-checked her reasoning. They reviewed the data. They consulted their own files. They agreed with her conclusion. Earth Defense Forces vectored a fast intercept group to the identified ship. The intercept group consisted of 3 small but heavily armed vessels. They emerged from faster-than-light travel directly in front of the Veshtari ship. They blocked its path. They opened communications. The Veshtari ship commander was not the same commander who had captured the Carolina Voyager. The original commander had been killed in the earlier battles. This was a junior officer who had been given command of the fleeing ship by virtue of being the most senior survivor. He was inexperienced. He was frightened. He was carrying what he had been told was the most valuable captive in the fleet. He was also, fortunately, less arrogant than his predecessor had been. The Earth Intercept Group commander, Major Rodriguez, opened communications with the Veshtari ship. He spoke calmly. Veshtari vessel, this is Major Rodriguez of Earth Defense Forces. You are carrying a kidnapped Earth citizen. We require the immediate release of Emma Mitchell. You will activate your emergency life pod systems and place Emma Mitchell in a life pod. You will launch the life pod in our direction. We will collect her. You will then surrender. Your ship and crew will be transported to a holding facility. You will be tried for the kidnapping. The penalty for your crimes will be determined by an interstellar tribunal. The Veshtari commander hesitated. He looked at his tactical display. He saw the Earth ships. He saw that they had him completely trapped. He understood that he could not escape. Major Rodriguez, if we release the captive, will we be allowed to live? You will be allowed to live, Commander. You will be tried. You will be sentenced. But you will not be killed for surrendering. That is our standard policy. Release Emma Mitchell. Surrender your ship. You will face justice, but you will not face death. The Veshtari commander made his decision. He activated the life pod systems. He had Emma escorted to a life pod. He launched the pod. The Earth Intercept Group collected the pod. They opened it. Emma was inside. She was alive. She was frightened. She was unharmed. She was clutching a small object in her hand, a small wooden bird with its wings spread. The carved bird her grandmother had given her. She had been holding it the entire time. She was 8 years old. She had been a captive for almost 4 days. She was incredibly brave. She had not cried since she had been transferred away from her mother on the lead Veshtari ship. She had decided in the small, fierce way of a small, fierce child that she was not going to give the aliens the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She had held that decision for 4 days. She had been waiting. She had been certain that her mother and Earth would come for her. She had not allowed herself to lose hope. When she was extracted from the life pod by the Earth military medics, she finally allowed herself to react. She started crying. She did not stop crying for a long time. The medics held her. They reassured her. They told her she was safe. They told her she was going home. 2 hours later, Sarah Mitchell was reunited with her daughter in a small medical facility on an Earth military base. The reunion was emotional in ways that cannot be adequately described. They held each other for a very long time. Neither of them spoke. They simply held each other and cried and breathed and existed together. They had been separated. They had been reunited. That was all that mattered for those first long minutes. Eventually, Sarah pulled back to look at her daughter. She examined her carefully. Emma was thin. She had clearly not been eating well. She was tired. She had bruises on her arms from where the Veshtari had handled her roughly during her transfers between ships. But she was alive. She was whole. She was Sarah's daughter returned. "Are you hurt anywhere?" "No, just tired and hungry. They did not give me much food." "We will get you food. We will get you whatever you need. Are you sure you are not hurt?" "I am sure, Mommy. I am okay. They did not hurt me. They just kept moving me from ship to ship. They argued about me a lot. They were scared. They could tell something bad was going to happen to them." "Smart girl, you noticed they were scared." "I noticed a lot of things, Mommy. I tried to remember everything in case it was important later." "That was very brave." "I had to be brave. I knew you would come. I knew Earth would come, but I had to wait for them. I did not want to make it harder by panicking, so I stayed calm." Sarah held her daughter. She pressed her face into Emma's hair. She breathed in the smell of her child. She thought about how close she had come to losing her. She thought about all the things that could have happened. She thought about how the universe had given her this gift, the gift of Emma still being alive, of Emma being whole, of Emma being back in her arms. She would not waste this gift. She would not take it for granted. "Emma." "Yes, Mommy." "You held on to your bird the whole time." "Yes, Grandma's bird. It made me feel better. I held it and I thought about Grandma and you and home. I thought about going home." "You knew you were going home?" "Yes, I knew. I just had to wait." Sarah held her tighter. The wooden bird was clutched in Emma's small hand between them. The bird had its wings spread wide, going on a journey, always coming home. Emma had gone on a journey. She had come home. That was what the bird represented. That was what every Earth child carried in some form when they traveled with their families. The bird was a promise. The promise that no matter how far you went, you would always come back. The promise that your family would always be there. The promise had been kept. 2 weeks later, Emma was fully recovered physically. She was beginning to recover emotionally. She had nightmares. She was clingy with her mother in ways she had not been before her capture, but she was getting better. Children were resilient. With time and love and patience, she would heal. Sarah was also recovering. She had returned to her work at the university. She was teaching her classes again. She was working on her research. She was trying to live a normal life again, but she was also different. The experience had changed her permanently. She had been forced to confront a horror she had never imagined. She had been forced to participate in her daughter's rescue. She had learned things about herself that she had not known. One of the things she had learned was that she wanted to do more than just be a scientist now. She wanted to help other parents who were in situations like hers. She wanted to use her experience and her contacts in the Earth military to support families who had members captured by hostile species. She had begun working with a foundation that did exactly this kind of work. She was finding it meaningful. The Veshtari situation, meanwhile, had escalated significantly. Earth's response to the attack on the Carolina Voyager had not ended with the rescue of Emma. The Veshtari had committed a serious crime against Earth citizens. The Veshtari had been operating openly in slave markets for decades. Earth had decided that the time had come to address this situation more systematically. Within 3 months of Emma's rescue, Earth Defense Forces had launched a major operation against the Veshtari. They had identified every major Veshtari fleet position. They had identified every major Veshtari slave market. They had identified every major Veshtari leadership figure. They had then engaged all of these targets simultaneously. The operation had been swift and overwhelming. The Veshtari fleets had been destroyed. The slave markets had been seized. The captives in those markets, beings from dozens of species who had been imprisoned and waiting to be sold, had been freed. The Veshtari leadership had been captured. The Veshtari political structure had been dismantled. The Galactic Council had supported the operation. The Council had been unable to suppress the Veshtari themselves due to political constraints. Earth's military action had given the Council the diplomatic cover to formally condemn the Veshtari and recognize Earth's actions as legitimate. The Veshtari species itself had not been destroyed. The civilian Veshtari population had been allowed to continue living on their home worlds. They had been required to accept new government structures, monitored by the Council and Earth, that prohibited the resumption of slaving and raiding activities. The transformation had been imposed externally, but most ordinary Veshtari citizens had been relieved by it. They had been tired of living under a regime that built its economy on kidnapping and slavery. The Veshtari were not allowed to develop a military for 50 years. They were not allowed to build ships larger than civilian transports for the same period. They were placed under Council supervision indefinitely. The galaxy was rid, for the foreseeable future, of one of its longest-standing problems. Sarah Mitchell received the news of the operation with mixed feelings. She was glad the Veshtari had been stopped. She was glad that other captives had been freed. She was glad that other parents would not have to experience what she had experienced. But she also understood that the Veshtari individuals who had been killed during the operations had families of their own. She knew that some of those families had not been involved in the slave trade. She knew that the consequences of justice were never entirely clean. She talked about these feelings with Emma. Emma was almost 9 years old now. Emma was intelligent and thoughtful. Emma had her own opinions about what had happened. Sarah valued her daughter's opinions. "Mommy, the people who took me, the Veshtari, were they all bad?" "Some of them were bad, Emma. The ones who attacked our ship, the ones who hurt the others, the ones who would have sold you, they were bad. They knew what they were doing." "But not all of them." "Probably not all of them. Many Veshtari were probably ordinary people who were not directly involved in the bad things. They lived in a society where bad things were happening. Some of them probably did not know. Some of them probably knew but did not have the power to stop it. Some of them probably participated even though they did not want to, because they had to in order to feed their families. So when the Earth ships fought the Veshtari, some of the Veshtari who died were probably not bad." "Probably some, yes." "That seems sad." "It is sad, Emma. War is sad. Even when one side is right and one side is wrong, war is still sad. People die who do not deserve to die. People suffer who did not deserve to suffer. We do war when we have to do it. We do it carefully. We try not to hurt more people than necessary. But even then, some people get hurt who should not have. But if Earth had not fought the Veshtari, more people would have been hurt by them. More kids would have been taken. More mommies would have been screaming in medical rooms like you were." "Yes, that is true. The choice was between hurting some Veshtari to stop them from hurting many more beings or letting them continue. Earth chose to stop them. I think Earth made the right choice, but it was a choice that had costs." "I think Earth made the right choice too." "Yes, sweetheart, I think so too." Emma was quiet for a moment, then she asked another question. "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to do what you do. I want to study aliens. I want to help Earth understand them." "Why do you want to do that?" "Because I think we need to understand them. The bad ones we have to stop. The good ones we have to help. The ones in between we have to talk to. I think understanding helps. I think if Earth had understood the Veshtari better, we could have stopped them sooner, before they took me." "You may be right, Emma. I want to be a scientist like you, but I also want to help with the diplomatic stuff. I want to talk to aliens. I want to figure out how to make them less scary, so that less kids get taken." Sarah looked at her daughter. She felt something move in her chest. Her 8-year-old, after being kidnapped and held for 4 days by hostile aliens, wanted to grow up to talk to aliens, to make the universe less scary, to prevent other children from going through what she had gone through. This was a remarkable child. This was the kind of child who would change the world if she had the chance. "Emma, if you want to do that, you can. I will help you. I will support you in every way. You can be a scientist. You can be a diplomat. You can be whatever you want to be. I will be proud of you no matter what." "Thank you, Mommy." "I love you, Emma." "I love you too, Mommy." They sat together on the couch in their living room. Emma was leaning against her mother. The wooden bird was on the coffee table in front of them. Buddy the dog was curled up on the floor by their feet. The afternoon sunlight was coming through the windows. It was a normal afternoon in a normal home with a mother and her daughter spending time together. It was the most precious afternoon of Sarah Mitchell's life. She had nearly lost her daughter. She had been forced to face the worst that the universe could do. She had been forced to participate in her daughter's rescue, using her own expertise and her own grief and her own determination. She had been forced to grow into someone she had not been before. And in the end, after all of it, she had this: a normal afternoon with her child. Her child was alive. Her child was happy. Her child was thinking about her future and dreaming about helping other beings. This was what mattered. This was what Earth had fought for. This was what the Veshtari had tried to take and had failed. Family, the simple, ordinary, irreplaceable gift of family. Emma grew up. She went to school. She studied hard. She did indeed become a scientist, just as she had said she would. She also became a diplomat eventually. She built a career that spanned both fields. She specialized in establishing communications with newly contacted species. She prevented many conflicts before they could begin. She helped Earth build bridges to civilizations that other species had given up on as too alien to understand. She often said in interviews that her career had been shaped by her experience as a child. She said that being captured by the Veshtari had taught her something important. It had taught her that understanding was the most valuable thing one species could offer another. The Veshtari had not understood Earth. Earth had not understood the Veshtari well enough to prevent the situation that had led to her capture. Both sides had paid a price for that lack of understanding. She had decided, as a child, that she would dedicate her life to preventing similar situations through better understanding. She did exactly that. She lived for 93 years. She had a family of her own. She had children and grandchildren. She lived to see her own grandchildren grow up. She made the galaxy a better place through her work. When she died, she left instructions for her funeral. Her instructions specified that the small wooden bird her grandmother had carved for her be buried with her. The bird that she had held during her 4 days of captivity. The bird that had reminded her, when she was a frightened 8-year-old child on a Veshtari ship, that her family would come for her and that she would come home. The bird had been with her for her entire life. It had sat on her desk at every job she had worked. It had moved with her to every home she had lived in. It had been her constant companion, and when she died, it was buried with her as she had specified. Her mother Sarah had died many years before Emma. Sarah had lived to be 104. Sarah had spent her final decades doing exactly what she had committed to doing after Emma's rescue. She had worked with families whose loved ones had been taken by hostile species. She had used her expertise and her contacts to help recover those loved ones whenever possible. She had been a comfort to many parents in their darkest moments. She had used her own experience to help others. Sarah had also kept her own wooden bird. A second carving made by Emma's grandmother years after Emma's capture. The bird had served as a reminder of what had been almost lost, a reminder of what had been recovered, a reminder of what mattered. Sarah was buried with her bird too. They sat in 2 small graves in a quiet cemetery on Earth, mother and daughter, side by side, with their small wooden birds with wings spread wide, going on a journey, always coming home. The Veshtari had thought they could take a small child from her mother and use her as merchandise. They had been wrong. They had not understood what they were dealing with. They had not understood that Earth would come. They had not understood that the mother of the captured child would help her own daughter's rescue. They had not understood that the consequences of their action would be the destruction of their entire criminal infrastructure. They had not understood any of it. That had been their fatal error. They had not understood humans. They had not understood the lengths to which humans would go to protect their children. They had not understood the resources that Earth would commit. They had not understood that taking one Earth child was not just an attack on a single family. It was an attack on the entire civilization. The civilization had responded. The response had been comprehensive. The response had been just. The response had been final. The Veshtari had been transformed by the response. Their criminal structure had been dismantled. Their society had been reformed. Their younger generations had grown up in a different world than their parents had known. The new generation of Veshtari worked in legitimate professions. They built things. They studied. They contributed to the galactic community. They had become, slowly, a respected member of civilized space. But they had paid for the lesson with the destruction of their old way of life. The lesson had been written in blood. The lesson was simple. Do not take Earth's children. Do not harm Earth's families. The consequences will be more than you can bear. That had been the message Earth had sent to the galaxy through their response to the kidnapping of Emma Mitchell. The message had been received. The message had been understood. The galaxy had remembered. In the centuries that followed, Earth's children remained relatively safe. There were still occasional incidents. Pirates and criminals still operated in the outer regions. But the systematic targeting of Earth's families that the Veshtari had practiced had largely ceased. The risk had become too great. The Earth response had become too overwhelming for any but the most desperate or foolish to attempt. The wooden birds continued to be carved by grandmothers. They continued to be carried by Earth's children. They continued to symbolize the promise of return. The promise that no matter how far you went, you would come home. The promise that your family would come for you, no matter what. The promise had been kept for Emma Mitchell. The promise would be kept for those who came after her. The galaxy had learned to respect that promise. The galaxy had learned what happened when it did not. That was the legacy of the small girl who had been kidnapped by the Veshtari. That was the legacy of the mother who had used her expertise to find her daughter. That was the legacy of the Earth military that had dismantled an entire criminal civilization in response. The legacy was a galaxy where children were safer, where families were protected, where the promise of return was real because the response to violations of that promise was reliable. It was a small legacy in the grand sweep of galactic history, but it was a legacy that mattered to billions of parents and billions of children every day across thousands of worlds. The promise was simple, the promise was profound, the promise was kept. And the wooden birds, with their wings spread wide, continued to fly through the pockets of children across the galaxy, reminding everyone that going on a journey only mattered if there was something to come home to. Family was that something. Family had always been that something. Family would always be that something. For Emma Mitchell, for Sarah Mitchell, for every parent and every child who had ever loved someone enough to come back for them when they had been taken. Forever and always. Until the end of time.